Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. It's always a pleasure and a privilege for me to sit with you and to go over some of these things. And based on the feedback that we're receiving, I am greatly encouraged and I'm thankful for all of you. And so thankful for the sharing of the links and encouraging our brothers and sisters. And even our theme is starting to really catch on, that we want to be informed without being overwhelmed. And I really do believe that's more important than ever right now in this time period. We knew these days were coming. So none of this catches us by surprise, right? We all knew that we were going to see these days. After all, the scripture is clear that that we have to be alive and remain unto the coming of the King. And so we knew that we would see some really wild things. But even those seasoned students of the scripture are still being surprised by the way in which things are fulfilled. So if you find yourself sitting there going, wow, I never saw that coming, then understand that you're not alone and others are feeling the same way, which is why we wanted to do these. And again, our theme of let's be informed without being overwhelmed is really starting to take on. And I really want to encourage people to do that, because when you allow anxiety and all of those fears to overwhelm you, well, they really, really affect your choices. And boy, oh boy, are we watching right now people put under a lot of pressure. And as a result, they're, well, not always making the best choices. And so this is all the more reason why we need to encourage one another and be in one another's lives. Just today, I got a beautiful encouragement from one of my sisters, and that's all it took. I was riding on a cloud after that. I just, all right, well, at least one person appreciates that, and that's the value of an encouragement. That's the value of your family, to say, hey, you're doing good. Keep going. You're doing great. That is something, sometimes that's all someone needs to hear. And so let me encourage you to be that voice of encouragement to your brothers and sisters, because maybe all they need to hear is, I see you. I know you're doing good. Keep going. You're going in the right direction. You don't know how valuable that really can be. And maybe you do. Maybe you're one of those people that understand that. And if you are, then the world is better because you're here. So thank you. And today we're going to be going over some headlines. Here we are in the middle of the Feast of Sukkot. I pray that you all are having a wonderful time as we celebrate the feast. And unfortunately, as we knew would be the case, the days are great and terrible at the same time. And so tonight's headlines, for those of you that don't know, and if you're following us for the first time, we do have a website called remnantwatch.com, where we put the stories that we share each week, and you can go back and find previous broadcasts and previous stories by simply using the search box right here in the middle of remnantwatch.com. And there are times when you do want to go back, because we talk about things that end up coming to pass and happening. And so it's really important that we kind of have a little bit of a simple way of indexing these things that we are reviewing. And frankly, it's getting a little scary out there. As a matter of fact, tonight's top headline, let's get into the news. Is this the Gog-Magog war, right? A lot of people are asking this question. Well, Erdogan, who is the president of Turkey, is currently threatening war between Israel and Turkey over the handling of the matter going on in the Middle East. Turkish President Recep Erdogan warned of war between Israel and Turkey in his speech at the opening of Parliament on Tuesday, saying the Israeli leadership, acting with the delirium of the promised land and with a purely religious fanaticism, will set its sights on our homeland after Palestine and Lebanon. And so he's letting them know. And Erdogan said that the Zionist Greater Israel Project includes Turkey, added the Netanyahu government harbors a delusional ambition, including Anatolia, and pursues a utopia, and reveals these intentions on various occasions. And so now the world, of course, is reacting to this. And of course, he is pointing to the proximity of the borders between Turkey and Israel. And Erdogan hinted that war is imminent between the two critical allies of the United States in the Middle East. And he says, look, from the Syrian border to Hatay's Yagladagi district, the Lebanese border is 170 kilometers away by road. Turkey is only 2.5 hours away from Lebanon by car. In other words, occupation, terror, and aggression are right next to us. He's not wrong, folks. He's making a great point. And that's frankly what a lot of people in a lot of states in the Middle East are starting to realize, is that there's a force operating that's attempting to encroach, right? And so I do think that they, in fact, have that. I do believe that Erdogan is characterizing that correctly. That I remember seeing one of the Arab leaders saying, if we're willing to go and sit down and negotiate, and they're not willing to sit down and discuss, then you have to ask the next question, which is, what's their end game? Where are they going? If they're not interested in peace, if they're not interested in discussing anything, if they're not interested in resolving these conflicts, then what are you really trying to do? And I don't think it's an unreasonable question, folks, given what we've seen already with 2 world wars that have very sketchy reasonings behind them, as we now have been able to look back. And meanwhile, there's no abating in this conflict. So Israel says Iran is about to, quote, pay for launching a major missile attack against it. Wasn't Iran retaliating for an attack it received? So here we go again with the tit for tat. Iran launched dozens of missiles toward Israel on Tuesday in what it said was a response to the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and others, potentially taking the region closer to a wider conflict. CNN teams on the ground, of course, we can really trust these guys, right? Constantly negative news. In multiple locations in Israel, observed dozens of missiles piercing through the skies as sirens blasted across the country. At least one person was killed and several were injured during the attack, according to the Israeli military. Well, that's one assessment. Rumors are starting to emerge that the damage done by this Israeli Iranian attack was far more extensive than they're letting on. And the BDA is quite sketchy. We don't have a battle damage assessment, so we don't really know. We have to rely on social media or mainstream media, but there are some very credible voices that are coming out of the region that are sharing some very ominous news that the damage was greater than they're letting on. And this is about to get really nasty. And remember, guys, that there was a prophecy by a man by the name of Albert Pike that predicted this Third World War and even told you who the players would be. And it is uncannily working out. So there are those who are on a different team who are trying to make other prophecies come to pass, if you know what I mean. So we have a competition going on in the heavens between whose prophetic word is going to come to pass. It's getting interesting, folks. We are really spectators in a big war that we're really not party to in a way, in many ways. When he saves humanity, he's saving us out of a war that we didn't start. Yeah, we're casualties of a war we didn't begin. And so thank you for our Savior and Messiah who delivers us out of it. But boy, oh boy, how many are sitting on the sidelines going, whoa, this is getting dicey, right? And so, yeah, Iran fired. If you didn't hear this, I don't know if you guys may not have been paying attention, but Iran finally did respond. And Israel hasn't responded back yet. But it fired 181 missiles at Israel. And of course, the prime minister is, very much, they made a mistake. They're going to pay for it. And the IAF, along with the U.S. and Jordan, intercepted most of the projectiles. That's what they're telling everybody. No damage and no harm, no foul. We intercepted them. We got them all. Can I tell you guys something? Iran has hypersonic missiles that can't be stopped. Okay. So do you guys understand what's going on now? All right. So just understand that. This is not what they're telling you. And we're going to see a lot of casualties in the civilians, right? The people in the middle, which is why Mashiach says to those who have wisdom, when you see certain things, this is what you do. When you see this, you do this. And the people that listen to Mashiach, well, they have a different faith than those that dawdled. Okay, it's that simple. This is not the hour. How many are getting the message? This is not the hour to dawdle. Okay, and so here we go. And now, refresh my memory, guys, because you're all. One of my favorite things is that I get to hang out with such sharp people, and I get to talk with and interact with people they're not being fooled. You guys are not on the fluoride. Your guys are off their nonsense. You're awake. Much more wonderful to have conversations with you. So help me out here. Wasn't it the UN that created this whole thing operating in the Middle East? Weren't they the ones who gave them the charter, right? Weren't they the ones who announced the state, right? The state of Israel, right? Isn't that what happened in 1948? So don't you find this interesting that the Secretary General of the UN, who gave them their walking papers, right? Like the UN gave them their existence, right? I mean, this state, if you will. And he's persona non grata. Israel bars the UN Secretary General Gutierrez from entering the country and basically refused to allow the very ones who started this state, gave them their charter. I think that was very interesting because it's a spirit. This is all spiritual, folks, right? So think about this. This is like, well, thank you for the coronation. Now I'm going to kill you. Thank you for appointing me, but now we don't need you anymore. Well, if you needed them to legitimize your state, you still need them. Israel's foreign minister declared UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez persona non grata and was henceforth banning him from entering Israel, according to the Post X Twitter on Wednesday. U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller later stated the U.S. believes this step is not productive at all. Not productive at all. No, it's childish. It's tit for tat. It's silliness, right? It's the behavior of those. It's like sore loser behavior. And these are the people that gave you your papers. You wouldn't exist if it weren't for those guys, right? So isn't that interesting? It goes to show you they only used the UN for validation. That was all. That's all they did. They didn't care about the UN. They never cared about it. They just used it for validation. And when they stop validating them, they kick them to the curb, which is pretty typical. You ever meet people that do that use you for validation, but then when you don't validate them, they kick you to the curb? Happens all the time. Okay, and so now what's happening is the IDF is throwing the UN out, and what are they doing? They're preparing a significant retaliatory strike. So what did we tell you guys? When they have a war of words, it always precedes kinetic action, right? So we watch the war of words as it builds up so we can know what's coming. And we knew this was coming a year ago. We could watch it literally building up. There's a broad recommendation within the IDF to respond to the Iranian attack while minimizing risks and maximizing opportunities. The IDF on Saturday commented regarding the retaliation against Iran for launching ballistic missiles toward Israel, clarifying that combat is currently ongoing in 7 different fronts alongside the continued fighting in Gaza and the West Bank. Israeli soldiers and forces are engaged in operations in Lebanon, Iran, and its proxies in Yemen, Syria, and Iraq. And as a matter of fact, that's true. But it isn't going quite as well as they would like you to believe it is. You know how they love to project this image that everything is going, their way. They're winning, and everyone is falling beneath them. But that is not the case. I watched one, and if you want to go looking for it, you can. Excuse me. I watched their invasion of Lebanon is not going as well as they are pretending. I watched an entire line of advancing Israeli soldiers be wiped out. The entire line. All right. I watched it. I watched the video of it. So I haven't heard anything in the news about that. Had to be quite a few people that died just in that attack alone. And so, I don't think it's going quite the same way that they'd like you to believe. And of course, you can understand why they would, manipulate that. And we can understand why they would want to put a good face on it. But just between you and us, just here in this corner, us people in this section of the internet, if you will, in this back corner, okay, don't you be fooled. Realize what's happening here. This is devastating. These are devastating things. And besides what that conflict, I don't know if you guys knew this, but the U.S. is engaged. The United States is engaged. In fact, the U.S. and British militaries did strike 15 Houthi targets across Yemen since we last talked. And so American officials confirm aircraft and warships bombed strongholds of the Iran-backed rebels who have threatened escalating military operations against Israel and, frankly, have been harassing ships in the Straits of Hormuz as well. The U.S. military said it carried out 15 strikes on Friday against targets linked to Iran-aligned Houthi fighters in Yemen, where residents reported blasts at military outposts and even an airport. The British military also took part in the strikes. And military aircraft and warships bomb Houthi strongholds at roughly 5 locations, according to the officials. So, once again, we're dropping bombs. Not really sure what they do. And here we go again with the bombs. The great solution. And as a matter of fact, and this is for all those who, maybe catching a little too much euphoria, pay attention to the heroes you make, because this is getting scary. Look at this. So this one campaigned on, the anti-war president. Remember that? You're going to see a different guy if he gets in there. Okay? This is not going to be the same guy that was in there for the first 4 years. You're going to see a totally different guy. Trump urges Israel to take out Iran's nuclear facilities. Rips Biden for urging Jewish state to show restraint. Well, that's showing you something. Okay? What's he really telling you? Former President Trump urged Israel to take out Iran's nuclear facilities and blasted President Biden for urging the Jewish state to exercise restraint. And of course, he goes on to make his comments, which I'm not going to read, as I don't worship this guy like some people do. And I really do think that he's a dangerous actor on the scene. And I do believe that we have to be very careful about some of that euphoria. That being said, I certainly understand people trying to find the best of two evils. Unfortunately, we have not been given much of a choice. And folks, I don't think it really matters. I really don't. I think that there's a lot of crazy that it isn't going to matter who sits in that chair. The world itself is reacting. And thankfully, and this was an interesting story. I didn't really see this one coming, honestly. I thought they would go unabated, unabashed, right toward, full on oblivion. But no, look at this. Emmanuel Macron, he's come out and said that, no, they don't think they should be supplying weapons to Israel during this Gaza conflict. Isn't that an interesting development, guys? Right? So he's saying, hey, I don't think it's a good idea that we keep doing this. And there was a speech associated with this, but French President Emmanuel Macron on Saturday urges a halt to arms deliveries to Israel, calling for a political solution in the nearly year-long Gaza war. Well, now it's over a year. I think that today the priority is that we return to a political solution. We stop delivering weapons to fight in Gaza. And so that's kind of interesting. But you raised another good point. That's a great point. There's all these cross lines. None of these countries are completely independent of one another. They need one another. And believe me, Israel exports things as well that they now don't have. But Israel is a net importer. So believe me, it is suffering. There's a reason why there's a mass exodus from Israel right now. And also, here's something else that we're figuring out, folks. And this is something that, as a veteran myself, and many of you who watch our weekly update are veterans. We've never seen warfare like this. This is right out of the movies, guys. As a matter of fact, the U.S. is preparing because of what they learned from the Ukraine conflict and from the Houthis and from this, experience with a different form of guerrilla warfare, hearkening back to Vietnam, where the big bully was beaten by small guerrilla tactics. Well, the U.S. is preparing for drone-on-drone battles at military bases for that reason, because what they're finding out is that their billion-dollar equipment can be neutralized by $1,000 drones. And whoops, that's a problem, right? So they're having to learn how to do things a little bit differently in a new era. U.S. military bases will be protected by attack drones under Pentagon plans to repel Iran-linked groups in the Middle East. On Monday, the Defense Secretary announced that the U.S. would be expanding its replicator program, which has been developing American attack drones to be deployed against China. It's really silly to tell your enemy what you're doing. So I just don't get these articles. I really think that a lot of this has got nothing to do with enemies abroad. Who are the people they typically use their weapons on? Isn't it their own people? So I really don't have a lot of confidence in some of the storylines that we're being fed. But nevertheless, the technology is there. So never look at the technology, the intentions that they tell you. Just look at capability. You can, because intentions can change and generally do. And now switching gears, this last week in the United States, you'd have to have been sleeping under a rock. And if you did, you probably got shook, because we got hit as we anticipated last week with a mega storm, Helene's aftermath. More than 130 they're reporting dead. I think you can add a couple of zeros right here that they're not telling you about. Okay, safely add a couple of zeros right here. Okay, dead and historic flooding, millions without power, and catastrophic destruction. We're all watching this one unfold in front of us, and we're all getting pieces of the story that are starting to make us wonder, what's really going on? And of course, all of you have seen the stunning footage, and we were talking about, two boats and a helicopter just a couple of weeks ago. And remember, folks, at the beginning of the middle of the spring, one of our broadcasts, actually several broadcasts, we had picked up the pattern that they were dropping these hints about the hurricane season. You remember that? And we warned everyone that this looked to us to be predictive programming, that they were letting you know, they were putting it in the psyche to make you expect it, so that when it came, it wouldn't surprise you. We cannot determine which comes first, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're picking up the pattern and figuring out from the 10,000-foot view how these things are now coming to pass. And it's the stories that are coming out of this. Some of them are truly gut-wrenching. I mean, this one here, grandparents found hugging each other. And this is after a fallen tree killed them in their South Carolina home. Isn't that sad? As Hurricane Helene roared outside, the howling branches and snapping, John Savage went into his grandparents' bedroom to make sure they were okay. And they weren't. And this is so very sad. And they, of course, died in their bed. And thankfully, the silver lining of that story is they had that notebook ending and died together. But folks, this is tragic, and we're going to continue to see more and more tragedies unfold. And how do I know that? Well, because nobody's coming to the rescue. That's how I know. what came out afterward, and I think this headline speaks volumes. All Americans, I do think they should be outraged. I do think you should be outraged at what you're hearing right now. And for every American, for every person living here that is now suddenly realizing the reality, my heart goes out to everyone who is awakening right now, who's realizing nobody's coming to help. These people are not helping you. They lied to you. And this is the reality on the ground. And, of course, Mayorkas makes comments of lack of FEMA funds, says Florida AG Moody. And top Biden officials are criticizing more than $1 billion previously spent. Where? Okay, so this is a literal slap across the face. Even though states across the southern United States are still reeling, which, by the way, if we knew that there was a high chance that there was going to be a hurricane season and they were reporting it, how is it that they didn't plan for that, right? So there's that. Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, who was in fact impeached, warned FEMA does not have the funds to get through hurricane season. And this is about to be the worst Florida has ever seen. As a matter of fact, this last this last hurricane, the amount of damage that it did, I believe it was in the trillions of dollars. And so, and then we hear this. So you want to talk about, if this doesn't seal the deal for, not that either one of these are any good, but how would you like to be explaining yourself here? Look at this. Harris is being slammed for pledging millions to Lebanon. What? The Biden administration has faced criticisms for its handling of hurricane relief. Meanwhile, it's pledging to Lebanon. Because that's a state in the United States, right? You are within your rights to be fully enraged and upset about that if you're an American who's been standing in red, white, and blue, all your life, and here's what you're going to get for it. Users on social media took aim at Vice President Kamala Harris after the Democratic nominee took to X to pledge millions of dollars in aid for Lebanon. At the same time, residents of North Carolina struggle to recover from Hurricane Helene, and no one's going in there. No one's going in there, folks. Okay, that's the reality. All right, I'm going to give you a little extra here. Let me put this on the screen. I put this in the, let's see if I can find it. I put this in the back discussion board for our folks. And, it was a little bit of a jarring video, but I'm going to go ahead and play it because I don't think it's that long. And I think it's very good for you to understand that no one's coming. I do caution you. I think there's one beepable moment where language might be.
You deserve to hear this. I'm a truck driver, all right? I have a 53-foot step deck. I've been trucking for about 2.5 years. I have a YouTube channel. You can verify that on Babyline Hotshot. Usually in a disaster situation, it is payday for truckers. We look for that hurricane. We look for that ice storm. There's generators coming to you. There's stuff coming out of military bases. There's excavators, skid steers, bulldozers, tree trimming equipment, pumps, like water pumps to pump water out of places that have been flooded. There's no loads on the load board coming to you within 125 miles of Asheville. It's called Truck Stop. This is where I find all my loads. Chicago, Illinois, up at the top. Within 250 miles of Chicago is where I'm going to pick up. The second is the destination. So it goes origin, destination. Watch. See? Drop-off location. Let's do city. North Carolina. Click it. Boom. All right. These are all $1.40 a mile loads, $1.39. That was posted yesterday. There's nothing. There's nothing. These are loads that you wouldn't even, nobody's taking them. They're just on the load board. They've been on there since yesterday. You can see, right? Let's type in a different city. That's from Chicago. Maybe Tennessee, maybe Nashville is closer, and they'd send resources from Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, Tennessee, within 250 miles of Nashville, to Asheville, North Carolina, within 125 miles. Let's see, that's it. That's all the loads. That's all the loads that are 28,000 pounds in. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, what the hell's going on here? I had brokers call me and tell me, Stu, have you seen any loads going to Asheville or like anywhere around the Carolinas, South Carolina, Georgia? Is there any like FEMA loads? There's none.
So I think you get the point here. Why aren't there tons of loads going to North Carolina? Does anybody else find that highly disturbing, to not find tons of things going to aid your fellow Americans in this time period when clear devastation has hit? I don't know about you, but I'm stunned to find that out, because in the past, even though there's been tremendous natural disasters, okay, in the past we've gone through things like that. But what have we always seen? We've always seen the people of the country kind of pull together and help one another out and pull one another through these time periods. Are you really going to tell me now that we're not allowing that to happen? And what they're now coming out with, which I was stunned by this. I truly was. Look at this headline, guys. After the deluge, lies, misinformation, and hoaxes about Helene cloud the recovery. They're blaming the people busting them for the slow response. You want to can somebody say gaslight? The facts emerging from Hurricane Helene's destruction are heartrending. Businesses and homes destroyed. Whole communities nearly wiped out. Right? Hundreds of lives lost. Hundreds of people missing. Yet this devastation and despair is not enough for the extremist groups, disinformation agents, hucksters, and politicians. Hucksters. There's hucksters out making money apparently on this. Okay? What a lie. And what a sad commentary that we're seeing. I saw a video where, let me see if I can find it, where, and maybe you guys know about this. They were, oh, here it is. Look at this. You're in luck, guys. Look at this, guys. Watch this. This helicopter, this was just the other day. There's a group of people that have collected some donations. And this helicopter, it's a government helicopter. I didn't make this video. Somebody else did. Look what they're doing on purpose. Okay? Deliberately trying to destroy the camp. It's an utter disgrace. And I hope you're waking up. I hope you're realizing the reason why we're doing these broadcasts is so that you would not be overwhelmed and you'd be informed. And if you think this is going away, you're wrong. It's going to get worse and more brazen. They're finally showing really their true colors. Their true colors are coming out, guys. And we can't make excuses, and we can't keep looking the other way and pretending. That is pure hatred. That is pure hatred. And there's a reason for it. There's always a reason for it. What is the root of all evil? What is it? You got it. It's the love of mammon. All right. And how a tiny town hit by Helene could upend the global semiconductor chip industry. Did you know that? Yeah, virtually all of the world's supply of high purity quartz, a mineral required to produce semiconductors critical for AI, comes from a tiny North Carolina town that was devastated by Hurricane Helene. If something were to happen to these mines, it could put the entire industry on its ear, period, one industry expert said. Now, I know a little something about the Asheville, North Carolina area. I know that it was replete with some very serious, nefarious activity. And there is also rumors coming out now. Don't know if they're verified. We're going to have to wait and see. But that there may be conflict going on. That's part of the reason why they're dealing with some of these things. And when you see government people, I'm not talking about just an official here and there that's unnamed, right? Unnamed government source. We've got a senator, U.S. senator, that's out there saying they know how to make weather. Now, of course, they're trying to dumb this down. Look what they did to her. She's pushing the dumbest Hurricane Helene conspiracy yet. Meanwhile, was it United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, or Oman? One of those three countries admitted that they had, what did they say? Overseeded the clouds and caused some problems, right? So I don't have to read this. You guys can go over to Remnant Watch and read that. But the point is that they're now mocking people who are questioning these storms. And I don't think it's unreasonable to do. And this now what we're finding out. So we're not done. I mean, that was one of the most devastating storms in U.S. history, folks, that we just experienced. And now the western side of Florida is dead in the bullseye. And Tampa Bay is especially vulnerable as Hurricane Milton is now approaching, a different hurricane. We just went through this, and here it comes again. So if you're feeling a little bit like the book of Job, you're picking up what's going on. Okay? As a matter of fact, and I can tell you this, we said this yesterday with a bunch of other brethren on Shabbat as well, 60-plus-year-old men sitting together, and none of us can ever recall a hurricane or even a strong tropical storm that went from the west side of the Gulf of Mexico and picked up to category anything by the time it got to the east side of the Gulf of Mexico. This is beyond unprecedented, okay? And so Hurricane Milton becomes a Category 5, guys. Remember when they told us that they might need a new category? Remember they were telling us about Category 6? Remember that? What do you think the chances are we might see one of those before it's over? They warned us for a reason. Food and water is flying off the shelves as Florida braces for overlapping disasters. Milton is a monstrous Category 5 hurricane, and it's forecast to make landfall on the high Sabbath day of the Feast of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. So when the scripture said, pray that your flight be not in winter nor on a Sabbath day, many people were only thinking about the weekly Sabbath. But this is a high Sabbath. This is a Sabbath for a solemn assembly. So did you know that at this same moment that this will be hitting, there will be a solemn assembly on set-apart land? I'll tell you about that more in a moment. West Central Florida is facing the greatest hurricane threat in more than 100 years. This is not just some another storm. The Fox Forecast Center warns that communities that have only been sideswiped by hurricanes in the Tampa metro area over the last several decades now face the threat of a direct strike, which could bring a large storm surge to a vulnerable coastline. And I think that's an understatement considering what we just endured. Less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene struck Florida's Big Bend, Milton is threatening to do the same. But given the state's distinctive coastline, the angle of landfall could allow the new storm system to be the worst in over 100 years for parts of West Central Florida. So I'm hearing from my brethren who live in that area, and many of them feel like they got set up because there was a lot of people went to that part of the world thinking that was going to be a great place to be. So glad you made it home safely, family. And as it turns out, it's not a very good place to be. And by the way, just FYI, just so that, Floridians don't feel like they're the only ones getting hammered, former Hurricane Kirk on path to impact Europe as a massive post-tropical cyclone. And Kirk, the 11th named storm of the 2024 hurricane season, peaked at Category 4 last week and has been gradually weakening since then on Monday morning. And so but this one's heading right here, up to Europe. And so there's all kinds of things going on right now, and Europe's about to get slammed as well. We shout out to our friends there. But nevertheless, just be aware that that is happening right now. And one of the most disappointing things that I have seen, one of the encouraging stories we saw was the helicopter pilots that were going in to help the people. Remember that? And they were flying in there and doing their own rescue effort. Well, apparently they were given an arrest threat. They were stopped from going in and rescuing people under threat of arrest. Folks, go and look at that story. That's really amazing. Go watch that. I think you'll be a little bothered by it, but nevertheless, it's important to know that this is what's happening. And I'm glad it got out. I'm glad that somebody reported it. Okay, but nevertheless, the point is that they're not playing games here. That it does not look like it's all hands on deck. Let's save lives. I said it doesn't look like it's all hands on deck. Let's save lives, does it? No, it doesn't. And so let's be careful. Speaking of, all hands on deck, let's save lives. There's a whole lot of people that should be waking up right now going, huh? You mean if you have an opportunity to do this, you're not going to do it? Just so you know. Just so you're clear. I'm not going to spend any time on this. I'm just putting it up here so you can see this, so those who are worshiping and thinking, you know what I'm talking about, and get a little check here and realize, oh, we're supposed to be saving lives, folks. We're on the side of what? We're on the side of life. Okay. And so we certainly feel differently than what is, the sentiment there. And when they're telling pilots that they can't fly in and they can't help people out, personally, I think that you're asking for a war. You're asking for a war. And I think they know that. You're asking for conflict because, these are people's families. What do you expect them to do? Don't you think they're going to want to go in and help them? And then these are neighbors. And this is not good. This is not good. So stand back, get out of that area. If you're in that area, pray for those who are in harm's way. Some people are doubling down. Craziest thing I've ever seen. I don't understand the thinking, but there's some folks that'll double down rather than leave when, trouble is coming. How many know that you're supposed to get out of Dodge? You're not supposed to double down. And this is the Tampa freeway. These are people that finally figured it out. Okay? They finally figured it out. Time to go. Time to beat feet. Time to get out of Dodge. Time to get out of the place that they are clearly marking, right? Okay? This is just common sense, folks. And when he says in Revelation 18, come out of her, my people, he's not talking about any one particular place. He's talking about an entire system that we have taken for granted, that has taken us for granted. They've taken you for granted. They took you for granted. And the best way for you to, reclaim your sovereignty is to walk away. And that's what he tells you to do. Come out of her, my people. Revelation chapter 18. So that you are not a recipient of their plagues. And I'm not subject to the crazy. I want you to look at this, guys. Okay. I bet you didn't know this. Did you know that, all you guys thinking all this technology is great, right? Look at this. The dark side of Meta's smart glasses. I didn't even know this, but it makes sense. Harvard students reveal how Mark Zuckerberg's creepy spectacles can be used to instantly find strangers' names and addresses. Engineers built the system with Meta's Ray-Bans, facial recognition, and AI, combining now to, at lightning speed, give information about not only who they're talking to, but where they live. So what if a guy comes up to a woman and says, hey, I'd like to get your phone number. And she says, beat out of here. I'm not interested, right? He already knows where she lives. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? This is perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with that, Peter. I don't know why you're thinking there's a problem, Peter. This is perfectly safe. Nothing could possibly go wrong about that. There's not going to be any issues. Whew. Meanwhile, Mr. Biden is warning everybody, saying, I think there's going to be violence. He's worried about violence around the presidential election. Again, narrative seeding the narrative, okay? Putting that out there and saying, oh, no. And many people, unfortunately, when we were yelling for years, find your fold, weren't finding their fold. President Biden told reporters Friday, he's confident the election will be free and fair, but said he was concerned about the potential for violence if former President Donald Trump again refuses to accept the will of the voters, basically saying, we already know he's going to lose, so get used to the idea. So there's no violence, Don't go getting violent. I'm amazed at how easily they can manipulate so many people. So again, folks, since you're not manipulated, I know that. I know you're awake. But watch what they're doing with the crowd so that you can be in front of it. Okay? If you know they're whipping them up, then don't stay there. Right? There are places that are really getting hit. Look at this. Michigan's largest county suffering a cyber attack. We warned about this, by the way, guys, that because of that Vault 7 release that WikiLeaks did many years ago, that there were going to be more and more of these cyber attacks as more people began to utilize those tools that were put in the wild. In Wayne County, Michigan, which contains Detroit, suffered a cyber attack that disabled many government services, probably saving everybody a lot of money with those government services not working. The largest county in the state with more than 1.75 million residents is dealing with a cyber attack that shut down all its websites and limited the operations of several functions, including financial transactions, case management, and estate sales. So you see how fragile their system really is. And they built it deliberately on sand, silicone that falls apart fairly quickly. All right. And so this is something that isn't going to go away. And I think we're going to continue to see more interruptions, more difficulties. You can decide whether you think those are planned or whether or not you think that is something that is just a natural result. One of the things that we saw, we had a story about Bank of America. I think it's up here. I'm not seeing it right now, but there was NatWest, RBS, and Ulster Bank app meltdowns as outages did affect thousands. So it's not just one system or another. Computer systems worldwide are coming under attack. Large numbers of bank customers at NatWest, RBS, and Ulster Bank have been unable to access their accounts. Same thing that happened at Bank of America. Thousands of NatWest customers have been hit by a major web outage today, and that left them unable to access funds. Now, again, usually these things come back in a day, right? No big deal, everybody. What's the problem? Oh, we fixed it. Oh, mea culpa, mea culpa. I'm so sorry. Didn't know, right? And here's the reality is that they very much did know. But what is happening is they're testing response rates. They're testing the system. They're testing to see how fast you get upset. What is the response rate of the population? Do they, do they get the pitchforks? Right? Nobody does anything. Remember Greece? Guys, remember that? The bail-in in Greece? You probably don't remember that, but there was a bail-in in Greece where they just basically reached into people's checking accounts and just took their money. Yes, they do that. They do that. They just reached into their checking account and just took their money right out of their account. Hang on a second. I've got a technical glitch here that I got to fix. Pardon me. So, I don't think anybody should be surprised by the behavior that we see coming out of those who honestly don't love you, don't care about you, and feel entitled. Honestly feel entitled. You know that, guys? They truly do feel entitled to your money. They feel like they own it. And so when you put your money in their banks, sorry about that. I've got to reset this browser. When you put your money in their banks, they They act like it's theirs. And if you read the fine print, it kind of is. And so we're all waking up to the reality that, we got completely deceived. We were told a lot of lies. Here we go, coming back here soon. And here we go. We're now starting to realize what those lies were, and they are in every category. So it's not like, well, they only lied about this or that. No, they lied about everything. That is what they do. That is how their system operates. Okay. And so when you're seeing these things starting to manifest, as we've been watching the patterns, then, and that, they're lying, they're deceiving, right? Then what do? You start to plan without their input. And this is one of the challenges that we now face, because we've come to rely on news or information, right? To inform us, to give us the information we need to make decisions. And now we got to question everything we're hearing. We have to question all of the various outlets and information that we're getting. And so this is part of the psyop of the last days, to unsettle everyone, to put you in a place where you are nervous, right? What do nervous people do? Well, nervous people act nervously. And how many know that gold is suddenly trading at record numbers, right? Gold bars are flying off the shelves as bullion prices smash records, and gold is breaking through, surging this year. And it's being sold at Costco. Now you can go and buy gold at Costco. Look at that, $2,600 an ounce. Wow, is that up, huh? Everybody's running to gold because, of course, gold's going to save them, right? Because if you were on top of, if you're in Asheville, North Carolina right now, and you need, some water, well, it's really easy. Just go back into your house and go and get that bag of gold you put back there. And I'm sure someone will give you some water just magically, right? And food too. And they'll fly you out too. You can wave your bag of gold and the helicopter guy will come by and get you. I bet you they'd rather trade that gold for a family of friends right now. I bet you they would trade their bags of gold for a brother and a sister and just a bowl of hot food and a nice, warm, dry place to sit. He told them and warned them their gold and their silver is cankered, and it will witness against them in the day of trouble. I promise you their gold won't keep them warm. Okay? And this thing that's coming for Florida is no joke. It's a Category 5 monster, and it's meant to do damage. So whether you think it's natural or made up, it makes no difference. It's still going to hit. And mandatory evacuations are underway across the west coast of Florida. So those people that didn't want to leave, now you ain't got a choice. I said, now you ain't got a choice. You don't get to go. You got to go. Okay? The wise left before they had to. Selah. It just is what it is. I mean, we can't deny the truth. We can't deny facts. This is a time for humbling ourselves. This is a time for realizing, yep, we should have listened to warnings. We should have listened to those things. Repent. Ask Yahuwah to have mercy upon you. And because these guys are going to play the victim. They're going to act like it's, they're the good guys. And how dare you accuse us of not taking care of you? Okay? And it's ridiculous. FEMA is accused of playing the victim after insisting criticism of Helene. Handling is dangerous. The audacity of people to expect the Federal Emergency Management to show up with helicopters, to show up with food, to show up with supplies. What a shock, right? That people are expecting that. I wonder where they got that idea. I wonder. By the way, on a more positive note, did you know that on this past Sabbath day, silver trumpets were blown from the 12 stone altar, and we love sharing this. It's one of our favorite things to share with all of you, that in fact, there is in fact a restoration of the 12 stone altar, and it has its 12 flags representing. In fact, we just got new refreshed flags representing the 12 tribes of Yasharel, the name of Yahuwah and Yahusha. This is at New Kingdom in Arizona. It's on set apart land, and it is on the exact line of the East Gate in Jerusalem, not north of it, not south of it, not 1 foot left or right, exact line. And the silver trumpets are the trumpets we blow for the calling of the congregation. And then after that was the blowing of the shofar. I share that with you for a reason. Let me say, well, why are you sharing that with me, Peter? Well, that was in the middle of the Feast of Sukkot. And the very next day, I saw a story. Let me see if I can find it here, which I found very interesting. Here it is. Look at this, guys. This came out literally the next day I saw this story. October 6th is when this was published. And they said that for the first time since the Second Temple, the shofar sounded on the Temple Mount, and the silver trumpet sounded as a call to war. Isn't that interesting? What a coincidence. Of course, you might, all these coincidences, I don't know. Do you believe in coincidences? I don't know if you believe in coincidences, but I don't. I see correlation. Now, correlation isn't necessarily causation, but certainly interesting. So I do believe that things are happening right now at a level that we've never seen before, and I think continue to see unprecedented. You want to talk about something odd, unprecedented. Did you guys know that if you lose your furry pet, they can bring them back? There's an exclusive Europe lab where Brits can clone their pets to bring them back from the dead. I know. I can't believe it either. Like, that's literally in our faces. Hey, we can do cloning. Yeah, we know how to do cloning. That's called soft disclosure. When they do things like that, they're slow letting you know, kind of like they did with UFOs, where they slow let you know that, okay, you were right, but we're not going to tell you that you were right about cloning. So there's that. And if you think it's just limited to pets, we've crossed. This is all old tech, guys. None of this is new, by the way. They dug this up from who? The Nephilim. Who filled the world with what? The same things. And what happened at a certain point? What did the Most High do? Yeah, he responds, right? Okay. And right now he's uncovering all their skirts. Like, everything that's being hidden is being revealed. The Vatican's going out of business. That's laughable. They're getting sued literally into oblivion. And you guys can dig into that. There's some great stories on Remnant Watch about that. But did you know that? And we keep reporting this stuff. I'm just like stunned at how many there are. Now they're just saying, okay, look. And there's too many of them to hit just one at a time. They're just like, around Dallas, the church scandals seem to have no end. There's just no end. On Sunday morning, and I'm not going to read all this because this is just, a lot of it is kind of gossipy. But the point is that the uncovering of the skirt that he promised would happen is happening right now. So all of these secrets are being revealed. The sex cult that was started at the Council of Nicaea to replace the Nazarene with utter falsehood and fakery has finally run its course. And that also, by the way, was part of their prophecy, that they would not only cause Zionism and Islam to mutually destroy, but at the same time, Christianity would come collapsing down. So don't think that you're such great researchers. The truth about the foundations of Christianity are coming out intentionally. They're being deliberately revealed or allowed to be put out there because the time has come for the disillusionment of millions of people who will then throw away their faith in Messiah because of the tricks these guys, the Pharisees, pulled when Messiah warned us that they would go over hill and dale and make twice the servant of hell as themselves. They wouldn't enter in, and they would try to prevent others from entering in. That's exactly what they've done, quite effectively. And he said, wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be that go thereat. But narrow is the gate and straight is the way that leads to life, and few there be that find it. And so now what are we seeing? We're seeing that all of the plans of the wicked are coming to naught. They're coming to grips with the reality of their own mortality. Their lives are limited. Their abilities are limited. And we are watching the culmination of the age. I believe we're going to continue to see more Bible prophecy fulfilled very quickly. I believe the pace is going to increase. We've now reached the end of the 7 years from the time we saw the sign of the woman in the heavens. How many of you remember that? And now we have the sign of the dragon in the heavens. So somebody was sending me a couple articles. You're going to see more information about that. You're going to have other teachers and other people start bringing more information about that. You're also going to hear some disturbing information coming out of the East Coast, warning you now ahead of time. And it's going to be more sad, not just sad stories about deaths, but more color and more reasons why these things are happening. And so understand that there's a war going on. Some of it is spiritual. Some of it is kinetic and natural. And just realize that you are in the middle of it. And that is why it is important for you to listen to his voice, to hearken diligently onto his voice in this time. Well, that's tonight's report. I pray this has been a barakah, an encouragement to you wherever you are. And I'm so thankful that you were able to join us and we were able to spend a little bit of time together. Thank you to every one of you who share the links, who encourage your brothers and sisters, and who speak life into them in this time, to remember to believe Messiah's words and to follow hard after him. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That's tonight's report. May Elohim Elohim bless each and every one of you. Good night.